Good afternoon, everyone. It is Tuesday, April the 21st, about 3:30 p.m. And we are reading, yet again, we are reading from Comfortable with Uncertainty by Pema Chodron. And today we're at chapter 24, which is called Staying in the Middle. And we'll just dive right on in. Staying in the middle. Openness doesn't come from resisting our fears, but from getting to know them well. We can't cultivate fearlessness without compassionate inquiry into the workings of ego. So we ask ourselves, what happens when I feel I can't handle what's going on? What are the stories I tell myself? What repels me and what attracts me? Where do I look for strength, and in what do I place my trust? The first thing that takes place in meditation is that we start to see what's happening. Even though we still run away and we still imagine, that is not actually what the sentence was. Let me start that sentence over again. Even though we still run away and we still indulge, we see what we're doing clearly. We acknowledge our aversions and our cravings. We become familiar with the strategies and beliefs we use to fortify our cocoon. With mindfulness as our method, we start to get curious about what's going on. For quite a long time, we just see it clearly. To the degree that we're willing to see our indulging and our repressing clearly, they begin to wear themselves out. Wearing out is not exactly the same as going away. Instead, a wider, more generous, more enlightened perspective arises. How we stay in the middle between indulging and repressing is by acknowledging whatever arises without judgment, letting the thoughts simply dissolve, and then going back to the openness of the moment. That's what we're actually doing in meditation. Up come all these thoughts, but rather than squelch them or obsess with them, we acknowledge and let them go. Then we come back to just being here. After a while, that's how we relate with hope and fear in our daily lives. Out of nowhere, we stop struggling and relax. We see our storyline, drop it, and come back to the freshness of the present moment. And I'm glad that I read this chapter today because I've been wondering about that. As we've gone through each day of teaching, I've been wondering about the balance between obsessing over or indulging the emotions and the thoughts that come up and that spiral around and tend to suck me down into a morass of despair, which that's just how my depression acts. I don't know about yours. And then distracting ourselves or what was the word that she used? Repressing. So, distracting ourselves from our thoughts and emotions or repressing those thoughts and emotions. So where is that balance, and how do we get to that? And so I like what she talks about here about what meditation actually is. It's acknowledging whatever arises without judgment, letting the thoughts simply dissolve, and then going back to the openness of this moment. And that this is a practice, that we have to practice doing that. And, the first time, the first 5 times, the first 10, 20, 100 times, we may not be quote unquote successful. But just in becoming aware and just in observing what's happening, that in and of itself is a success. that in and of itself is really, the first or second step. I also like in the first paragraph, these questions that she asks herself. She says, we ask ourselves, what happens when I feel I can't handle what's going on? What are the stories I tell myself? What repels me and what attracts me? Where do I look for strength? And in what do I place my trust? And I think that those are some questions I really want to pay attention to, especially that first one. Like, what happens when I feel I can't handle what's going on? I think that's just a really good, starting place. A good starting place to get a handle on. Excuse me, I need to drink of water. Is rather than trying to distract myself or to try to overcome, because that's another thing I will try to do, is try to overcome the challenges when I feel that things are becoming overwhelming. What is it that I actually do? How is it that I react in the moment? And then kind of dig into that with some inquisitiveness, some inquiry. I can't say that. That's a hard word for me. Some inquisitiveness and some curiosity. Because we do need to find a way to survive in this time and to come out on the other side. And I look at some of these practices as self-care, as a way to handle what's happening not only out around me and outside of me, but also what's happening inside of me. To find some measure of understanding and of peace. And to do that in a way that is kind, and compassionate, and gentle. So with that in mind, I will leave you with what I always, at the bottom, just want you to know. And that is that I love you, I see you, and I am here for you. And I hope that we are here for each other during this time. And if you have any comments about anything I've talked about, or you want to continue the conversation, or you have any thoughts about the reading, please feel free to comment. I'd love to hear what you have to say, and I'd love to, continue the conversation with you. And with that, I'm just going to say peace and blessed be.